Hello, Mr. Banks here. That's what most of my students call me anyway, but we're going to call this Coronavirus Chronicles Session 1. No, people have been trying to find things to do. I'm coming to you from the great state of Washington, of which we've been on a stay-at-home mandate for the past couple of days. Been not physically allowed to go to the school building for probably about 2 weeks now, so I'm trying to figure out what to do with time. Now, technically we're on spring break right now, so that's what I've been doing this week. But I'm a teacher at heart, and I don't know what else to do other than teach people or try my best to explain things. So just gonna share some thoughts about the coronavirus situation. Hopefully it's encouraging to you what I'm about to share. And I'm not a professional, so don't expect any kind of elaborate things, but I'm just gonna give it to you as straight as I can give it to you. This is gonna be really like a class session that I would do in class. So if I were to call this lesson something, I'd call it "What You Been Eating." In my house, that's always something that was, my parents like to always ask us that question, especially me. I am known, for those of you that know me personally, I have a very large appetite. I can eat a lot, and I'm pretty thin, but that doesn't stop me from putting down as much food as I can handle. But the interesting thing about food is it's a necessity. People need it. And over here in Washington, this coronavirus thing got a little bit more real for us than it did for other people more quickly, because we had some issues. We had the first confirmed cases. They were on the west side of the state. I live on the east side, so we didn't get any confirmed cases here until probably just a few days ago. But I remember going to the store. It was March, early part of March. It was probably like March 5th or 6th. It was a Friday. I had gone after work, and everything was packed. The Walmart, every store. It's like, what's going on? Why are everyone trying to get things? An interesting thing about food is there's what people like, and then there's what people need. And when you think about food, the kind of things that were being bought weren't the I guess the more pleasury kind of food items. It was the staples, the essentials, things like rice. And I had to get this one because I couldn't find any actual bags of rice. That thing was sold out, and I'm telling you, this was back two and a half, almost three. Tomorrow will make 3 weeks since this thing was going down. Rice is hard to find. Potatoes also hard to find. I mean, you couldn't find them. And the interesting thing about staples is when there's a crisis or there's an emergency, people don't get things that they necessarily want. They get the things that they know will last, that will really stick to them, things that are easy to fix, things that they can create with not too much effort. But the interesting thing about food as well is there's those long-term kind of things like the rice and the potatoes, but then you got to get your present stuff, some fruit. Got some mangoes here, cuties, pistachios. So all these things are considered healthier things that people would get up front and personal, and all these things wiped out. And I got this stuff before things really got super, I don't want to say bad, but super empty. I'll use that word, because I was just going to do my regular weekly shopping. I wasn't trying to stock up or hoard or anything like that, but just the level of people in the store was unlike anything that I had ever seen before. Now, also, we're talking about food. Shameless plug. Any of y'all that know me know I'm born and raised in Vegas. Shirt from school I used to work at there. And you wonder how real, how serious this coronavirus thing was going to get. Really, I remember having a conversation with some friends, and I said, if they close some casinos down in Vegas, then that will be unprecedented. And this was before they did any casino closures. And probably 3 or 4 days after I said that, I had many friends. I was watching the news. I was reading some things online, and it says the wind is closing its casinos for a month, and then I looked online again. It said the governor ordered all the casinos be closed for a month. And I'm like, I'm 35 and a half years old, and that has never been done in my lifetime. That the casinos in Las Vegas, which are the main industry there, are closed. If you know anything about casinos in Vegas, one thing that casinos are well known for are food things. They have some of the best buffets around. They're relatively inexpensive, and you can go there and you can get anything that you like. But one thing you won't find in buffets, per se, are fast food things. I had to get this for demonstrative purposes. So, ordered some McDonald's this morning just to have that baggage proof. But in the few times that I've been out of the house in the past 2 weeks, the fast food places do not have as many people in them. And I know that is partially because people have been discouraged from, well, actually they can't go inside because they're locked, but they can do takeouts. But people have maybe been understanding that it is cheaper and more cost effective to actually buy the food and make it yourself. And in light of the fact that some people are going to be without work for the foreseeable future, and with that comes loss of income, people want things that will last. And you can eat the McDonald's, and I'm not going to sit here and say, this is terrible and this is bad, because people eat it all the time. But in terms of a necessity, that's not where people went, because that's a quick fix kind of thing. And in the scenario like we're living in currently, you don't want a quick fix thing. You want something that is going to last. So in the Bible, and I have my Bible here, there's a story. There's actually quite a few references to food, but there's a story that I'm going to look at in particular right now. It's from the book of Daniel. And if you've been in the church or any religious background, this is a story that is quite well known, but I'll read a bit of it to you, and then I'll share my thoughts on it. So this is Daniel chapter 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. So the nation of Israel, which at this point had been split into 2 parts, you can go read that in the earlier section of the Bible, but the king of Judah got taken over by Nebuchadnezzar, and he pretty much took all the, I won't say all, let me read it specifically. So verse 3 says, and the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. Verse 4, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, in whom they might teach the learning in the tongue of the Chaldeans. So they took pretty much any child that was deemed exceptional. These would have been your A students, your overachievers, if we're updating it to a modern context, because if you're gonna take over a place, you want the best and brightest, right? So these young people were taken captive to the king's palace, and verse 5 excuse me, says, and the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. So this is where the food is introduced into the story. So they're taken captive, they're taken to the king's palace, and then they have this trial period. Okay, in the trial period, it said here in the verse that it would last for 3 years, and they would be given the king's choice food. So they would be given the meat and the wine. Now among these, and this is verse 6, were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So we get introduced to the main characters in this story. Now we have Daniel and his 3 friends, which these guys show up in another part of this story in chapter 3, but we're going to stick with chapter 1 for now. Verse 8, I'm skipping verse 7. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. the brakes there. So Daniel, who is a captive in the king's palace, is deciding already, he says, purposed in his heart that he will not eat the food that is there in front of him. And I know growing up in my house with my mom, my parents, that would have never been an option. It's if the food is there, you eat it. But it's not that he just decided he didn't want to eat it. He said he did not want to defile himself with the king's meat and wine. If you know anything about the history of the Israelites, what they were being asked to eat in the palace, that would have been a 180-degree turn from what their typical diet was. So it wasn't just that he was being petulant and stubborn and saying, oh no, I'm not going to eat this because I'm mad or I'm salty that I'm captured. This is not what I am used to eating. This is not how I feel will make me healthy. So I'm going to make an intellectual decision to not eat this. And there could have been various repercussions that followed from that, but he purposed. It says he purposed. He made that decision before things even went down. But verse 9, here's the interesting thing. God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. So if you show yourself friendly, if you show yourself trustworthy, you can make some requests that may not otherwise be honored. And the prince of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. So he's worried about his life. He's like, if the king sees you and you look different than the other kids, I'm going to have a problem. It's not just a problem. He knew he would probably lose his life over that. Then Daniel said to Melzar, and we have a name for this prince of the eunuchs, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Sorry, let me slow down. Prove thy servants, I beg you, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. And pulse would have been just some type of vegetables. So they're here for a 3-year period, and they want a 10-day experimental phase. And for those of you that are students, you know how experiments work. Like, okay, they're the control group, we are the experimental group. So allow us to have this different diet for a couple days, and then let's see what happens. In verse 13 it says, Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So they said, give us 10 days. After 10 days, look at us versus the other group and see what we look like. See if we're any worse for the wear, so to speak. And if we are, or if we're not, then deal with us accordingly. Verse 14, so he consented to them in this matter and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. So they were blessed or rewarded, for their choice. They showed up fairer. It said fairer and fatter in flesh. So those are the exact terms here. Fairer and, I don't know if you want to call that thicker, healthier, whatever terminology, but for whatever reason, and in this case the reason is diet, they looked stronger and better than the other people. So what they had been eating made the difference. So the title of this little session, I called it What You've Been Eating, because that's always a question that people ask. So here's some connections that we're going to make. The food that you eat gives you benefits, and those benefits are never really seen until a time period later. Like right here, I have an apple. And I took a bite of it for dramatic effect. But will that one bite, when will anyone see the physical effect that it has on me? In 3 seconds, 30 seconds, an hour, 2 hours? I mean, Anytime you eat something, you have to wait for the digestion to happen in order for the effects to be made clear. So I took this one bite. You don't know if it gave me energy, if it impacted me negatively. Now, most people would call this a healthy food item, so this is a good thing to eat. But let's say I get in here and get some ice cream, and I love ice cream. So let me grab a spoon real quick. And this is mine. Nobody else eats out of this, so yeah, I'm gonna eat some right out of this carton. So let's say I get in here and I get a bite of this. This is salted caramel clusters. So, ate a bite of that. So, when will that affect me? 3 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 minutes, an hour? Most people would say that is definitely not as healthy as this apple that I just ate. What you been eating? So, here's the point when it comes to food. If you want to be prepared for something, and those of you guys that know, not only do I teach Bible classes, I also teach some English classes, I also teach PE classes. I love teaching PE because I love being active and getting kids to be active, but when I see kids that are lacking or lethargic, many times they will admit it's because they didn't eat something. Sometimes they didn't eat anything before PE class, or sometimes they ate unhealthy things, so they don't have the resources from which to draw in order to be successful during PE class. Like, oh, my energy's down, or oh, I ate all this stuff before lunch. And I'll catch that too. So sometimes I notice kids struggle in PE class when they say they ate too much stuff before lunch. So you gotta find that sweet spot, not the extreme of, oh, I'm only gonna eat this one thing, or I'm not gonna eat anything at all, versus I'm gonna eat so much food right now. And I've seen kids that have come to PE class and run around when they have to make a stop by the bathroom, and it's not for the reasons that you would think. It's, yeah, we won't get into that, but you can go figure. Then they come out, they're like, oh, I shouldn't have eaten whatever or as much of that stuff before this class as I did. So in times of crisis, in times of challenges, when you're being asked to maybe do some things that you haven't done before, you're being put into a situation where you're not sure if you can progress from one step to the next, what determines your success? It's all about the food. What have you been eating? If you come with the right nutrition, with the right food sources, then it's not as hard to draw from those resources when the challenge is presented in front of you. Okay, run a mile, do 50 burpees, do these things. If you've eaten some good food that gives you the right energy, it's, oh, I can get this. Yeah, it's a challenge. You got to work your way through it, but you would feel 1,000 times better than if you had just eaten like some ice cream or some candy bars right before. And the energy will come and it will peak, but then you'll be left kind of wanting, or you may not have the energy to keep up with it at all, or God forbid, you may just kind of pass out on the ground, which I have done before in CrossFit, because CrossFit is intense and you got to make sure that you come well prepared for that thing. So, what point am I getting at? Biblical application. During this time of crisis, these challenges that have come along with the coronavirus, and I'm talking to teenagers, people around, maybe you don't have jobs or anything, but spiritual sense. If you're feeling afraid or you're worried, my question is, what have you been eating? And in this case, we're not talking about literal food, but we're talking about physical food. You don't have the resources to draw from if you haven't been partaking of them. So if you're afraid or you're feeling uncertain, have you been getting into sources that have been able to give you encouragement, that have been able to give you the strength to succeed? Now, the good news is if you haven't been doing that before, that doesn't mean now it's too late to start. And that's one of the interesting things about challenges is in our challenges when we realize, okay, maybe I need to make some tweaks to how I'm approaching things because this happened and I wasn't ready for it, and I want to get ready. So we're in a situation where you've gotten a chance to slow down and you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I stand with God? Where do I stand with my relationship with Jesus? Where do I stand with my relationship with others? And then you kind of have to take stock of, have I been partaking? Have I been eating the right things? Have I been praying? Have I been reading my Bible? Have I been reading devotional books? Have I been consuming sources that will push me in that direction? Has all your time been spent on other things? So that way, when the crises come, you realize you don't have the energy or the success that you need. And it's made me self-reflect quite a bit the past couple of days about where I've been spending my time. And it's easy to spend your time even on things that are good. I put a lot of time into my teaching and trying to prep things and keep on top of grading and other things, but it can be really easy to be consumed by all of that and not be taking the time to get in the Bible or be on my knees in prayer or being proactive and trying to find ways where I can reach out to people. I'm wearing this shirt, and this was a shirt that was made from a youth group that was part of my home church in Vegas, and on here it says living in faith every day. It's an acronym for LIFE, L-I-F-E. And we thought, what is the best way to encapsulate a positive life? And it was, you have to live in faith every day. And it doesn't say have faith every day. That's different than living in faith every day. In order for your faith to be active and to grow, you actually have to live it out. So that's where we are right now, and that's the thought that I wanted to leave you with. I'm going to conclude with one more Bible reference to a story. This one actually doesn't have to do with food, but take it however you will. So we looked at Daniel 1. This is Matthew 25. And if you know anything about Matthew 25, it's right after Matthew 24, which sounds silly, but Matthew 24 is the first chapter that people go to when we want to talk about things of the end and ideas about prophecy and what to expect. And for people that are concerned about the state of the world currently, Matthew 24 is one of those chapters that people go, yes, read that. But let's go one chapter behind that, Matthew 25. And there's a parable in here that Jesus told. In both Matthew 24 and Matthew 25 were words directly spoken by Jesus. But in Matthew 25, he tells a parable of 10 virgins or 10 bridesmaids. And if you don't know the story, I'll summarize it for you really quickly. But there's 10 bridesmaids that have gone out to a wedding, and they have lamps, like the old lamps, like think Aladdin, genie lamps, that they had to use for light sources, and they were waiting for the bridegroom to come, all 10 of them. But while they were waiting, all of their lamps went out. So the problem was some of them had extra oil, so they could just relight them, and then the other ones had to go around and look for oil, and by the time they found some, the bridegroom had come and the door was shut. So connecting this to our earlier story about Daniel and food things, they all had the same goal in mind. They wanted to go to the wedding. They all had the lamps. They all had the light in them. But there was a moment in time where all those lights went out. But those that had the resources to draw from, that had the oil that they needed to light the lamps again, they were ready to go when the bridegroom came. Those that had to go around running and looking for it, by the time they found it, the door was shut. So now is that time where we need to be making sure our oil stocks are full, that we're stocking up on the good quality things. So I wanted to leave that with you. I will pray for you if you give me some prayer requests. I will pray for them. I'm making myself accountable for that. If somebody asks me to pray for something, I want to do it then and there so I don't forget about it. And also, I just want you to be mindful of what you eat, whether it's physical or otherwise. So let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, thank you for these words that you have given to me. I know I'm just a humble servant, just a teacher, but at the same time, you can take us where we are and try and allow our experience to reach out to someone else. So I pray for people that are confused or uncertain or maybe just fearful, but at the same time, you're still reaching out to us saying, seek me while I may be found. So for those that are looking, Lord, let them stock up their reserves so that way when challenges come, Lord, they'll be able to handle it because they've had the opportunity to stock up on the things that they need to be able to deal with these challenges. So bless each one that hears this. Be with them during this time, whether they may be struggling with jobs or finances or any other situation that may be afflicting them during this time. Just give them peace. That's my prayer. In Jesus' name. Amen. We'll see ya.